I was terrified. I just heard my name being called to go stand up front at this camp meeting. I was 17. I had very little public speaking experience, and I was not prepared to share. And my pastor had just called me up to go stand in front of this about 50, 60 people to go share my testimony about how I just recently came to Christ about 7 months ago. And and he asked me before, and I told him no, but he did it anyways. He introduced me. He said a little bit of how we met, and he was talking, and he's like, "I'd like to invite the young man Enoch Leffingwell to come up here and share his testimony." And when I heard my name, I was frozen with terror. Everybody was expecting me. It's like, how do I say no now? And I had nothing prepared, and I was thinking, what do I say? What do I do? And I got out of my chair slowly, and I started walking towards the front. I could see all of the faces of these people from all over the nation, people who I've just spent the week with, and I had just preached my second sermon here at this same camp meeting. I thought it was going to be really long, and I had an hour and a half slot, and I ended up speaking for 29 minutes. I was so embarrassed, and now here I am sharing my testimony that I've never shared before, like this before, in front of a lot of people I don't really know. And now I'm walking up to the pulpit, and then I see what seemed to me a sea of heads, and they're all looking at me. And I was supposed to share with them something that I had no idea even what to say. And so I got on my knees and I prayed, and I said, "Lord, I don't even know what you would have me to say, but please speak through me." I claim the promise. Revelation 12:11 says they overcame Satan by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. And at that time, it was terrifying. I got up off of my knees, and I shared from the heart, and I shared what God has done for me. And you know what? That video was recorded. I was able to share for about 20 minutes, and the people were greatly encouraged. They really enjoyed the testimony, and that video went on to be, I believe it was my #1 most watched video on YouTube, called "Who is Enoch Leffingwell? My Life Testimony." And our YouTube channel, Walks with God Ministries, had over 151,000 views, and that was one of the top viewed videos that we had. And I mean, it just went everywhere. People were encouraged, and they were watching this, and they were seeing this young 17-year-old talking about how he gave up video games, and he came closer to Christ, and he dedicated himself to the Lord's service, and people were encouraged. But I wasn't prepared for that, and honestly, I didn't think I had much to share. I didn't know. I thought, like, why would anybody care about my testimony? But I was given an opportunity to share, and the Lord used it. So I'm here to tell you that your testimony matters, whether you realize it or not. My name is Enoch Leffingwell, and I have a passion for helping young people to identify their talents and to dedicate them to the Lord's service. That's what I love to do. And today, I'm going to be sharing with you an encouragement to identify what is your testimony, and to encourage you to start sharing it with other people. You see, Jesus, when he cast out the demons in Mark chapter 5, there was these two demoniacs that came. They were rushing Jesus, and his disciples were like, "These people are crazy," and they fled back to the boat. And Jesus, calm and noble, he just stood there, and he waited, and they bowed on their knees, and you can just see these demon-possessed men. They were longing to be delivered, but they couldn't speak. Demons would speak out of them instead, but you could see that they wanted help, and Jesus cast those demons out of them, and he caused them to go into the swine over, and the swine went over the cliff and they died. And then here you had these who were once demon-possessed men, who were the terror of the nation, now fully clothed, sitting in their right minds at the foot of Jesus. That was a miracle. And then you have all the city village people coming out, and they're wanting to see what the commotion is. And here they see these two men that were once the terrors of the town. They all knew these people. They lived in the graves. They would cut themselves. They much like very depressed people do. They cut themselves, and they're very emotional. And they had broken chains that the villagers, they would chain them down because they were so crazy. But they would break the bonds, and they were just wild, like mindless beasts almost. But this time, they were fully clothed in their right man. And they see Jesus, a stranger from Galilee, who just showed up on their shore and wreaked all this havoc and killed all these pigs. The people were angry. They were not ready to hear Jesus. They're like, get out of here right now, and don't come back. They were not ready to hear Christ. But what do you think these demoniacs were like? They just spent their manhood being possessed and under the control of Satan, the adversary of souls. And they met the deliverer, the one who changed everything in a moment. And they longed to follow Christ. And they said, can we go with you? And Jesus was like, no. Go to your friends and your family and share what great things God has done for you. Think about this. These demoniacs have never heard a sermon fall from the lips of Christ. They haven't spent as much time with Jesus as did the disciples, but they can share what they know. And that is what God is asking for us. He wants you to share. He wants me to share what great things God has done for us. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't prepare for a talk in front of all those people. But I shared from the heart what God has done for me. And as a result, these demoniacs, Jesus went away with his disciples, and when he came back, this heathen nation of Decapolis, when he came back, those demoniacs went all throughout the area, and they showed how Christ had delivered them, and it was Jesus of Nazareth that did this. And so when he came back the second time, there was large multitudes that were coming out. They were ready. They were thirsty. They were ready to receive the evangelist and accept the gospel because of these demoniacs who shared their testimony. Can you believe that? That's amazing. But it doesn't stop there. If you go to John chapter 4, you'll find another story of when Jesus was at the well and he met this woman who is the woman of Samaria, and he's like, woman, give me to drink. And she's like, what? How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? The Jews have no dealing with the Samaritans. And he's like, woman, if you knew what I have, the gift of God, that I have living water, you would be asking me of living water, and you would drink, and you'd become a wellspring of life, springing up into everlasting life. And she's like, where's this living water? I want this living water. And he began to tell her more about her life, more about the longing of her soul. She came for the physical water, and he gave her something better. The watchword of true education, something better. And she realized, they started talking about the prophecies, and she realized, like, you're the Christ. This is the Messiah. She dropped her pail of water and she ran back to Samaria. And she was yelling. She's like, come one, come all. Come see this man who told me all things that I ever knew. Is he not the Christ? And think about it. She couldn't break down the intricate prophecies of Daniel 9 to show the very year and season that the Messiah of the Old Testament was prophesied to come out. She couldn't explain these large explanations of who the Messiah was, but she had an experience with him, and she shared what she knew. And by sharing her testimony, there was a large crowd of these Gentile Samaritans who were coming out to listen to the words of Jesus. And when Jesus was explaining the prophecies, they're like, Jesus, can you please stay with us for 2 days? Please continue to share with us. We want to learn. We have more questions. And he tarried with them for 2 days, John says. And it was all because this one woman, though she was living in open sin, she had like 6 husbands, and the man that she was with now is still not her current husband. And she was living in sin. Her life wasn't perfect. It wasn't all fully there. She hasn't like arrived in this Christian character, but she shared what she knew. She shared this experience that she had with Christ, however simple it was. And that experience God used to convert a large portion of the people in Samaria. Think about that. I share this with you because I really believe that each one of you who are listening here have gone through very unique experiences that makes you who you are today. You've gone through some challenges that you've learned lessons. You've had some valuable experiences that, if shared with others, could help others to relate as well. I'll give you an example. Think about Jesus. One of the things that connects us so much with Christ is his ability to relate. Because when you think of Jesus like, oh yeah, he's God, he's perfect, and he was sinless, and we put him so far on a pedestal that and so high exalted, is like, well, yeah, he lived a sinless life because like he's God. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I can overcome my bad habits, or maybe that I won't be able to be more patient or temperate, or whatever I'm struggling with. I'm going to be struggling until Jesus comes. And we see Christ and we're just like, well, yeah, but that's a different story. He's God. And he is God. He is exalted. But he's 100% God, but he's also 100% man. See, Hebrews says that Jesus, he himself likewise took part of the same flesh and blood of Abraham. It said he took not on the nature of angels, but of the seed of Abraham. He was made like unto his brethren. Hebrews says that he was tempted in all points as we, yet without sin. And it was the fact that God, the monarch of the universe, one who angels worshipped, who created all things, who kneeled down in Genesis 2:7, who formed man out of the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Hebrews verse 1 through 1 and 2 says that God, who at sundry times and diverse manners created all things through his Son. It was Christ who was involved in the creation of all these things, but yet he condescended himself. He humbled himself and took himself the form of a servant, and even to the death of the cross. It was because, it's not because of the high exaltation of Christ that we're like, wow, he did all this, like I want to be like him. But it was because of the condensation of Christ. It was a self-sacrificing love of Christ, and the fact that he took on humanity. He forever linked humanity with divinity, that we could be like him. We could be saved through his blood. And it's because he became man is that we feel so connected with him. That God commended his love towards us, that while we were yet sinners, he died for us. And when you think about that, you realize, it's like, wait a second. That level of connection we have with Christ, that we feel like we can relate to him, that was the secret why Christ was able to draw the masses, why he was able to attract the large crowds. It's that ability to relate. So I share this with you because your experiences are very valuable. Not only do they make you who you are today, and they help you to learn lessons and like even these mistakes overcome, they become stepping stones to help you to be beacons of light and beacons of warning, to not make those same mistakes again. You now have a message You can turn that mess into a message, that trial into a triumph, a victim to a victory, the test to a testimony. That's what God is trying to do for you. And it's the very, like 1 Corinthians 10:13 has a very powerful promise. I've never saw it like this until recently. It says, there is no temptation taken you such as is common to man. That means no experience, no trial, no test, no difficulty you experience is it is common to man. That means it's not like different. Everybody, like there are other people who have gone through this, and especially Christ has gone through it, but there are other people. Like for instance, if you're struggling with patience, there's other people struggling with patience. You're not the only impatient one out there. You know, I hate to break it to you if that's news to you, but there's other people struggling. Or depression. There's a lot of people that get discouraged, who get stuck in this cycle of just doubt and self-talk and all of this discouragement and just recollection of the past and these failures and shortcomings, and we start to feel alone. Satan tempts us to feel like we're the only ones in this world that experience this. But the truth of the matter is, you're not alone. Like, I am so passionate about talking about mental health and helping people with this discouragement, because I remember what it was like to be discouraged. From age 11 to 16, I was severely depressed. I promised myself that I wouldn't live to be 18 years old. I couldn't imagine life in such a tormented state. Past 18 years old, I was going to end it. I knew from age 11 I would not see my 18th birthday. But when Christ entered into my life, and I started studying the Word of God and finding direction through His Word, it changed everything for me. I found the answers that I was looking for. I found a divine Savior that satisfied all of my needs. And I had the privilege to be able to, by my 18th birthday, I've already preached on all the West Coastal states, Washington, Oregon, and California. And I was actually, June 6, 2013, I was speaking at a camp meeting up in by Spokane, Washington. And on my birthday, I was at a camp meeting, of all places, sharing the gospel with others. And I just remember thinking, I was like, wow, this is real. I mean, you could just imagine that from 11 to 16, that's like 5 years of your childhood. That's like a third of your life. You would convince yourself and thought, for sure, you just knew you would never live to see this day. And here I am, preaching the gospel and sharing with others what God has shared with me, what I believe is my purpose in life, my personal mission. And I was just so humbled, and I was so grateful. I was like, wow, if God can do this for me, He can do this for anyone. There truly is hope for the hopeless. No one is too far gone that they cannot be encouraged and saved and redeemed by our Redeemer. And that realization really helped me, because I realized that there's a temptation to want to like say, oh, you know, like depression is shameful. This isn't something that people talk about. And yet so many people are depressed. But when you go to school, when you go to work, it seems like this person's happy, this person's life is good. When you're scrolling through Instagram, you're like, wow, that person's life is great. That person's life is amazing. Oh, I'm not doing what they're doing. And we get like this culture where we're all comparing each other by each other, which Paul says they that in 1 Corinthians, I believe it's 10:12, they that compare themselves among themselves are not wise. And yet we start to compare ourselves, and we start to feel discouraged, and we're like, wow, my life isn't that great. And we start to feel even worse. But the truth be told is, a lot of people are posting not reality. They just put a smile on, take a selfie, and then they're sorrowful, they're sad, they're empty in life, they're unfulfilled. They don't really have that purpose that comes through living a life that is surrendered and dedicated to the Lord's service, having a conscience that is clear from guilt. It's not circumstances, it's not poverty, it's not hardship or toil that weighs man down. It's guilt, friends. When we let go of the guilt, when we let go and let God, things start getting so much better. But I know that it's a journey, and sometimes we gotta there's some things that we gotta overcome in our mind. But faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. And so I share this because people will feel like they are all alone until you share your story. When people hear your testimony of what God has done for you, the searching of the scriptures and what you have learned, then people start to be like, wow, if God did that for you, then he can do it for me. If he can do it, why can't I? If she can do it, then what's stopping me from receiving Christ, from studying the Word of God, to finding my answers? I want what they have. But people won't come to that conclusion unless you share, friends. And you don't know what you know until you share with someone who doesn't know what you know. You know more than you think you do, friends. And like, what is a subject that people know better than anything else? Like, for me to like walk up when I was 17 years old, like having only spoken twice in front of my whole life for church, is and then being able to share that testimony for 20 minutes, it was because I was sharing my experience. It was coming from my heart. It's like I knew that's what God did for me. Like, nobody knows you like you know you. And that's what makes it so like not threatening. It's not like you had to put together a paper and do a lot of research and do this like interview of your life, but it's just kind of like you're just sharing testimonies and stories. And we've been telling stories since the beginning of time. We'd tell it at the campfires, or people were carving it on walls. We tell it around the dinner table. When we talk on the phone, we're constantly sharing testimonies, but we may not realize that they're testimonies. But friends, the reason why I'm being so big on this is because I really believe that you learning how to share your testimony is like the fundamental skill of evangelism and of Christianity and following Christ, is just learning how to share your story so that it could encourage others, because that's how we connect as humans. And I mean, think about it. The whole Word of God, the entire Bible, was given to us and packaged in 2 testaments, the Old and the New Testament. These are testimonies, friends. All of these experiences in the history, all the experiences of Paul, that's his testimony. The experiences of King David and Solomon, these are all testimonies. Adam and Eve, all of these are experiences that these people have gone through. And it doesn't just show all their successes, their victories, their valiant fights, but it shows their failures. It shows their humanity. It shows their weaknesses. And it really shows the ups and the downs. And it shows that they're real. You know, there was a time in the book of Acts where it was Paul and Barnabas who were preaching the gospel, and they were over in this area where they were worshiping the goddess Diana. I think it was Acts 18. And then the people that were over there, they were so captivated by these individuals. They're like, wow, you guys are like supernatural. We're going to start worshiping you as God. So they bring this calf, and they're like going to do sacrifice and start worshiping Paul and Barnabas. And they're like, whoa, hey, we're just missionaries. And the scripture says that we are men of like passions as you. Worship God. And that was the thing. What helped these people to see them differently is like, we're of like passions. The book of James describes how Elias was subject to like passions as we. He had challenges. Elijah was trying to hide from Jezebel. He was afraid for his life because she was out to kill him. And he was in a cave hiding and crying and saying, Lord, am I the only one? And God's like, wait, there's 7,000 that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. And so he wasn't all, like, he didn't always have faith. He didn't always have victory. He wasn't always like, hey, if your God be God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume your gift. And then he's like, but if my God is the true God, then let God show it through fire. And you know what? I'm going to pour water all over this sacrifice. And when God brings fire from heaven, then we'll know who has a true God. I mean, he didn't always have that faith. He had his ups and he had his downs. But it is that connection that helps us to feel, to make that connection with Elijah so we could relate to him. So we're like, whoa, like Jeremiah was the weeping prophet. It's like, I've been in tears so much in my childhood, and it's like in depression and discouragement, and it's like, wow, Elijah was depressed, Jeremiah was depressed, John the Baptist in prison was depressed. It's like, wait a second, all of these holy men of God, they've gone through depression. I'm not the only one. Wait, God used these men in ministry? God used these men to change the world? Then does that mean God can use me to change the world? Does that mean I could be used in ministry? And then you start to think, and you start to dream, and you start to realize what God's plan and purpose is for your life. And so I just want to encourage you, friends, that as you share your Christian journey, your experience with people, that is what's going to allow you to have influence with others. Because your words really don't matter until you have that confidence, until you win their confidence, until you have influence with the person or people you're seeking to reach. And what develops that confidence is your common ground. People trust and like those who have things in common. That's why in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul, the great apostle to the Gentiles, he was one of the best evangelists this world has ever seen. And he's like, to a Jew, I became a Jew. To a Gentile, I was as a Gentile. To a Roman. And he showed that he was able to relate with all. He said, why? That I might gain the Jew, that I might gain the Roman. So he related with those people so that he could witness to them. And there's a powerful lesson that we can learn there, is try to think, look through your testimony and see, how can I relate to these individuals, whoever I'm trying to reach? Like the first video that I recorded in my testimony, like that was just off the cuff. That was just I was unscripted, unprepared. I wasn't sure what to do, but people really liked that. And so everywhere I went, they asked me to share my testimony with for the young people. I'm like, okay, I shared my testimony. And I shared it over and over and over in a very similar way, tried to follow a similar format. But it wasn't until I saw this video. It was by this evangelist named Doug Batchelor, and this video was called The Richest Caveman. I mean, how's that for a title? He was a very wealthy man that lived in a cave, but he found a Bible in a cave, and that Bible changed his life. I encourage you to check it out. It's on YouTube. It's called The Richest Caveman by Doug Batchelor. Powerful. But as I was listening to this, it's got like tens and tens of thousands of views. I'm like, whoa, this has a lot of views. And I just see like a lot of people are talking about it, and I'm like, well, what is it about his testimony? Because here I'm about to go speak at a church, and there's about like 120 people at this church, and I'm like, okay, I want to get prepared, and I want to make sure that I'm able to just share my testimony. I want to have some slides up there, and I want to craft it. So I was like, I'm going to listen to Doug's testimony and see what about this really attracts people. What about this makes people so connected? And as I was listening through it, I was seeing how he was sharing things that he was like, whoa. He was going into detail of some of the experiences that he went through, about how like his dad was like a billionaire or something. He like had this airplane company. His mom was like, I think she was like one of the ladies who helped with Planned Parenthood, or maybe that's two testimonies. But anyway, she was like very liberal and like ready to, like, she was at the forefront of trying to get these wild agendas going. And I think she knew a lot of celebrities as well, and was in drugs and some weird stuff over there. And he was just showing how he was in and out of like military academy to get kicked out of academy. his dad was wealthy, lived on an island, so he was with all the rich people, and he'd break into the rich people's houses and he'd steal all their stuff. And they had a problem. They're like, whoa, people are breaking in, but and they like were putting out these defenses all around the place, and but really the predator was on the inside, not the outside, but they didn't know that. And he was just going into detail about how he got hooked up in the wrong crowd, was drinking alcohol, and he was doing these different things, and people were able to relate to him. And I was listening to that, I'm like, whoa, I'm like, wait a second. And as I'm just going through his testimony, I'm like, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. I'm like, whoa. But the types of things that he was talking about, at the time, I wasn't willing to share that publicly. And I've actually mentally and intentionally not like decided not to say those things, because I'm like, well, what if I say it and then people won't like me anymore? What if I say that and then people will think less of me? Or I'm just like, oh no, that's kind of like deep, that's private. And I'm like, oh, and it's like that would make me more vulnerable. And so I didn't share those things. But when I see how he was sharing and how effective it is, and they'd pan on the audience, people would be in tears, and it's like you could so relate. As I'm hearing it, I'm like, yes, I've done that, I've been there, I know that. And then seeing how this man has been reaching like hundreds of thousands of souls all around the world, probably millions of people, and then you're like, wow, if God can use him, he can use me. And you just get this strong sense, and you're like, wow. So I had to reevaluate how I share my testimony, and I went through and I was like, what are the different like trigger points that I know people go through that are really, really intense, that I've gone through as well? And it's like, how can I relate with them to help them to feel like they're not alone? And so I put together this slideshow, and I changed the way that I shared, and I was nervous, I was scared. I mean, I've shared my testimony probably like 50 to 100 times, but this one time it was different. And I was really gonna I was gonna be honest. I was gonna be real with people. And I was just like, I don't know what to expect of this, but I went over there and I shared, and I remember seeing the audience never before, as I was going into my childhood and how I was raised, how I behaved as a child. I was not a promising child. Trust me, I wasn't the child that you're like, oh look, that's a perfect candidate for the gospel. I mean, elders were saying like, oh, God's grace is good, but I don't think you can touch that child of the devil. He is way far off. Like my aunt called me the devil child, and like a pastor, when he found out that I was converted, he's like, what, that kid? It's like, I have to see that when I believe it. The same pastor that invited me to go share my testimony at the camp meeting, he was the one that's like, what, that kid? It's like, he gave his heart to Christ? Oh, I'll have to see that to believe it. So I mean, I was not very promising, but as I was sharing this testimony with people, I was looking in the audience and I was seeing like tears rolling down their faces, and I could see like the Holy Spirit was melting the hearts and was answering their questions and bringing conviction. And I was like, whoa, there's something going on here, something I've never seen before. And as I'm just sharing and I'm going through the slides, I'm going through the stories, and I could just see that people are connecting on a level I've never seen before. After that presentation, people are coming up to me, and this man, he's like, I've really struggled with alcohol, and I've got this problem, and I'm ready to quit it right now. I did an appeal afterwards, like I gave my heart to Christ, and I'm going to study the same thing that you studied, and I want to do this. I'm ready. And this other lady, she like came up to me during fellowship lunch, and she's like, can I talk to you? I have been struggling with this depression and unforgiveness, and you talked about the unforgiveness. How did you do it? What did you do? And I was able to just walk her step by step through that journey that I went through about overcoming the mental anguish and the unforgiveness, the bitterness. And I was just like, look, these are the steps you have to do. These are the promises that helped encourage my soul. And these are the hard decisions that you have to choose. But the choice is yours. You can choose life today. And she was in tears, and she's like, I'm ready. I want this. I need this. I must. And just seeing the impact that just shifting these testimonies about how to be able to relate with people, it made such a big difference. I was like, wow. Because before, I'm telling you, the reason why I'm saying this is because some of you have an amazing testimony, but you're too embarrassed to share. Some of you have a testimony that if you spoke could change people's lives forever. People who are struggling, who are feeling alone, like they're battling in life, and they're the only ones battling. But in reality, you know what they're going through. And in reality, you've been there. You've done that. And God has helped you to overcome. You contain the solution that these hurting souls need. But are you unwilling to share? That's my message to you today. Are you willing to share? You have a testimony that can change people's lives. And when you choose to speak for God, however humble opportunity it may be, I mean, look, I was 17 years old. I had no public speaking training. I was not prepared. But I just shared what God has done for me. And I really resonate with those demoniacs. Because I felt that I was possessed of demons. I was trapped doing things I didn't want to do. And I didn't know how to find victory. I didn't know what to do. But God delivered me. And when He did, I was ready to share with people. And I wanted to tell anyone and everyone. And I called up all my friends, my family, my classmates, my neighbors, and I invited them over to my first, second, third, fourth, fifth sermon. And I was like, look, I became a Christian and I want you to be there. I literally got a list of all of the teachers I've ever had from kindergarten to, I believe it was 11th grade that I was in at the time when I gave my heart to Christ. And I told them, I sent them an email, I'm like, look, I gave my heart to Christ. I'm a Christian now. And I'm about to give one of my first sermons at church. And I want to personally invite you to be there. Will you come? And I blasted this out to all my teachers. And I had like 4 teachers show up. And 5 teachers were like, I want to be there, but I can't do it yet. Invite me again. And I had other teachers, like the teachers that teach evolution. I invited them too, the biologists. They're like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And the vice principal, she came down and she's like, hey, you're not supposed to be using the school district emails for that. And I was just like, okay, I'm sorry. Won't do that again. But I was just like, it's already done. And all these teachers were invited and they showed up to the sermon. And I was like, wow, praise the Lord. But I'm telling you, I can relate to those demoniacs because once you're delivered, you want to share. I believe it's unnatural to keep to yourself what great things God has done for you. So your testimony matters. You have a story to share. And when you testify of Christ, you'd be amazed about the impact, the changed lives that can take place. So I just want to encourage you right now. And this is what I'm doing. I'm going through this 7-day challenge where my goal is to record 7 videos, live videos in 7 days. This has been very difficult. It is not an easy thing for me to do, but I'm persevering. And honestly, I'm sharing some things that I've never shared before. And and in this video, I'm telling you why. Because I believe, really, I'm not the only one who's gone through this. And I want you to know I care about you so much. I don't want anyone to feel that they are alone. I don't want anyone to feel that nobody can understand. Because I felt that I was alone. I felt that no one could understand. I know what that's like. And friends, I want to tell you, there is an army of youth that is being rightly trained, that is dedicating themselves to the Lord every day, serving Christ and choosing Him and saying, Lord, what will Thou have me to do? Know that you're not alone. And you could be a part of this army of youth. You could be a part of a movement of young people that are striving to share with others what God has shared with them. And friends, I believe it starts with your testimony. I believe that your testimony can change lives. It's just a matter of sharing. So if you are ready today to share your testimony, if you at least have seen, they're like, I recognize that I have a testimony and I have a story that needs to be told, then I encourage you to click like. Just like this video and also share this video because someone else, one of your friends, has also an experience that they can share with others, and if you don't share the video, then they are not going to know. And so I just encourage you to share with other people, because they need this encouragement. And I'm really thankful that you're able to go with me on this journey. This is not an easy thing, but I'm so glad we're doing this together. Please pray for these live videos. We're on day 6 of 7. We're almost there, but we still got a ways to go. So thank you so much for watching this, and I hope that this has been an encouragement to you, that this has added value to your life. If you'd like some more updates, if you'd like some more testimonies, some more videos like this, I encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list. You can go to thearmyofyouth.com/subscribe, and you will be joined to our mailing list, and we'll send you out more videos, encouragement, updates, and things that you won't want to miss, friends. But until next time, have a great day, and God bless.